Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software. I see that we have some new people joining us today, which is very exciting. We did a mailing last week or so and reminding people that this is happening, and so I'm happy that you're here. Before I get started, this is one of the things I do. If you're new, I always ask, can you hear my voice and can you see my mouse moving around on the screen? And apparently you can't hear my voice, so that's good. If you can see my mouse moving around the screen, yes, wonderful. Thanks very much. Great, excellent. All right, so today's Q&A is based on something called, I was about to hit a button here, the absolute layout container. And this was inspired by a video that I was sent recently by Lee Vasic. Lee Vasic is an independent alpha developer. In fact, he's part of the Independent Alpha Developers Network, IADN.com, which many of you guys know about. He did a little video demonstrating this feature. It's a feature that's been in for about 2 or 3 years. It's super cool. I had kind of forgotten about it, and I know that I haven't shown it off in a while, so we're going to show it off to you today. We're also here to answer questions, and you can type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, or you can type them into the chat box. And I will take there. If I can't answer your question, you can also always send it to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. So what is the absolute layout container? The absolute layout container is a way of designing forms in a UX that in a WYSIWYG manner. So what do I mean by that? Well, I will show you. The typical way that we design forms is by laying out individual controls. Now, I showed you a JSON form box a couple weeks ago, so there are some exceptions to the rule, but this is sort of the normal way that you lay out a form. You place each of the fields on here. This is not WYSIWYG. When you go into working preview, that's where you can see what it looks like. It is possible to detach a working preview window so you can make changes on one side and see what happens on the other side. But it isn't true WYSIWYG exactly because you are not dragging and dropping fields onto a form. So we do have a method of dragging and dropping fields onto a form, an alternate method of laying out fields, but it's one that we often don't use. So let's talk about first why you would and why you wouldn't want to use a responsive layout versus sort of this traditional method of putting fields onto a form. With a traditional, so the reason is basically because you're working now on the web, and when you're working on the web, you can't be guaranteed of a specific screen size. So about 10 years ago, we were probably the first low-code product. We were definitely the first low-code product to offer responsive design. And what responsive design means is that when you lay out fields and the size of the screen is big or small, someone comes in on a full-size desktop screen, or maybe they've just got a small iPhone screen, that you're going to have a good experience either way. And that's because the fields are going to adjust themselves. They're going to move down onto separate lines where necessary, and they're going to change their widths, their heights, and you can use things like Flex, which I showed you a few weeks ago, which is a great way of doing it. With absolute layout or WYSIWYG, you're instead placing things directly pixel by pixel onto the form. Let me show you another screenshot. I'll show you what I mean. So this one, oops, I'll show you another screenshot in a second. So for example, I've laid out the first name field, the middle name field, and the last name field, and I know exactly where it's going to be. On every screen, it's always going to start, say, at 0 pixels. It's always going to be 10 pixels down. Everything is going to be the same, regardless of screen size. This particular one is fine, but if I had one with a lot of fields, I would have an experience that wasn't particularly good on mobile, or I would have one that wastes a lot of real estate when I'm on a desktop design. That's why we use responsive, and that's why we typically go this method. However, there may be cases in which you know for a fact that the person is going to be using this interface, say, on a screen that's at least 1,000 pixels wide or something like that. And you might want to design it specifically pixel by pixel. In other words, you're going to lay it out exactly to the pixel. So that can be a very nice way of creating a look and a design and a layout that looks exactly like you want. But the other big advantage is that you can use it to lay fields over an image like a form. So here is the W4 withholding form. If you're from the United States, you've probably seen one of these before. And you'll see that what I've done is I've placed my first name field, last name, address, and so on in here so that when I'm filling this out, the person will see the form and they'll see it and they'll see the fields laid out here. Very much like a fillable PDF. So this interface is nice if you're using it for data entry. In other words, you've gotten something submitted on paper that you now have to do data entry and type onto the screen and fill it out, because the fields that you see on the piece of paper are going to be exactly in the same area on the screen. So your brain doesn't have to do that much work, and it means that you'll be able to enter in more data entry records faster as a result. So this is a really nice thing. And we actually have a really good example of how that is done in our video. Let me see. We're going to go get to that right now. Our video today is brought to you by Lee Vasic. Lee Vasic has, I told you at the beginning, has done a lot of good work for us. So I just want to make sure he's getting full credit. I'm going to show this video. It runs about 2 minutes. Sometimes video, well, two things. Sometimes video, you're not going to get sound for a couple of people out there. That always happens, or you're not going to get video. Either way, don't worry about it. It's only a 3-minute video, and I'm going to show you step by step what Lee did, but I really wanted to show this off first. Also, if you watch the recording of it, you'll be able to see the video too. So I'm going to go ahead and play the video. Hopefully it plays for you. The other thing is it might be a little loud, so if you've got headphones on, check your volume control. Oops. There we go.
A quick example of WYSIWYG in alpha. So I've built this form and I've copied the W4 form from the IRS, the PDF, and then I've scanned it in, and now I've put the fields right on the form. So you can see here's Oliver, and then I said white 2, and you can change these things. And then if you wanted to preview it, so this application here is a self-service application for our staff, so they can come in there and change their W4, or they can change their I-9, or they can do a direct deposit, and you can see. But let me show you real quick how that's done. So in the application itself, there's a W4 UX, and it's under an absolute layout control. So here's all of them laid out. And you can see right here we have a background image of a W4. So once we have that background image, you can see that I can just drag and drop the fields on there. So here, you can see how that works, and you could line this up however you want. You could stretch it so it goes through the whole thing. And then you can do the same thing in the report. So if I come to the report, here's a report for the W4, and you can see I scanned in the whole document, but then I can just lay the fields right on here. So you'll notice this one is an I-9, but it's not the whole, you don't need the whole thing, just the part that you fill out. But when you print it, for example, you'll see here, this is actually 3 pages, so you can print everything. But just, you only need on your screen what you're filling out. There's the WYSIWYG in alpha.
Go back into my PowerPoint. So, hey, thanks, Lee. So let's go ahead. For those of you who are really quick and picked up everything from that video, you now know how to do absolute layout. For the rest of you, you can watch me as I demonstrate it a little bit more slowly how you would put together an example like that. Now, Lee showed you 2 examples. One was the data entry form using the absolute layout container. That's what I'm going to show you today. But he also had a report, and we may show that in a future webinar, in which he used the background image of a form and then laid fields on top of that. So that wouldn't happen in your UX control. That would happen in a report when you're generating the output. All right, let's go ahead into my PC and take a look at our absolute layout control. Go ahead and close that. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to start from scratch so that you can see how the whole thing goes together. Absolutely, I'll save that. All right, so I'm going to go new. Oops, I'm in control panel. I need to be in the web projects control panel. Okay, I'm going to go new. Web component, UX. We're going to start with a blank one. All right. And the first control I'm going to put in is a container, and it's going to be the absolute layout container. So I'm going to click Add Control, and I'm just going to type CONT for container. There's container. Grab that container. And you'll see that there are a bunch of different container types, but the one that we want is called the absolute layout container. So I'll go ahead and insert that. Now I don't have any fields left in there or put in there yet, so now it's time to add some fields. Let's go add controls, and I'm going to go to text box, and we're going to have first name. It's like a middle initial, last name, address, city, state, and zip are going to be the fields that we're going to add. I'll go ahead and click OK. And now there they are. I'm going to go ahead and save my component right now. We'll call this absolute, if I can spell, absolute 2. All right. Now that that's in, if I were to take a look, I wouldn't see anything. In fact, it's going to even tell me why I'm not going to see anything. It's going to say you didn't put any of your controls in the absolute, or you didn't lay them out in the absolute layout yet. So you need to position them there. So I'm going to go do that. I'm going to click on the top tab for absolute layout. I'm going to go here into, scroll down to the section for the actual layout, absolute positions for controls. Now I'm going to click this button here. And here we go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to, in fact, before I even get here, I want to first place a background image in, and I'm going to use that W4 form. So the background image, I've already saved into my project, so I can say image in web project or style, click select, it's from the project, and it's called form W1, click OK. And now it's there. If I go into the absolute position control again, I should be able to see it. All right, that's cool. But right now it thinks that my form is only going to be like 300 by 200 pixels. This actually needs to be widened out. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm not exactly sure where it ends, but it's probably not too far from here. Oops, come on. This is a big form. All right, that's probably sufficient because right now we're only going to be filling in some of these fields here. I could also set, I think I can set the layout width and height here as well. All right, so I've got my W4 here, and now I have the field names that I just created over here on the left. So let's grab the click on the first name field to select it, and then I'm going to go where I'd like to place it. And I'll do that by clicking with my mouse and then dragging over the area where I want to place my field. So there's first name. For middle initial, I'll just do middle initial. Whoops, come on. There we go. Now you'll notice once they're placed, there are some guidelines. It's also snapping to a grid, which makes it really nice and easy to align your fields to each other. So like if I move up and down, I don't know if you can see this, but there's like a little hairline that goes over the top of both of those fields. So I know that they both end at the same place. Let me go ahead and put the other fields in. There's last name. And I'm going to shrink that down a little. And address goes right here. And actually, if you notice, as I place each field, it automatically moves down for me. That's kind of nice. I'm going to go ahead and click city and then state, because I don't really have to click on the left, and then zip. And let's make these the right size. I don't know if I have it perfect, but I can always go back and tweak it. But that's the thing, as you can see, you can get it exactly to the pixel in terms of positioning and in terms of size as well. Okay, those are all in. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to click Save. And now let's go into Working Preview and see what we have done. All right, so our Working Preview now has fields in it. I'm going to click on one of those fields, and you'll see I can type in Dave, and I can put in my little middle initial, and then actually D is my middle initial because Danger is my middle name, and then McCormick, and then so on. And that's, now we've created basically a form that looks like the paper form. One thing I don't like about this, though, out of the box, is that it isn't easy to tell exactly where the fields are. I mean, I can tab from one to the other, which is great, but I kind of want these to be styled so that it's clear where you type them in. If you've ever used like a PDF filler or a DocuSign or something like that, you'll know what I mean. Where a field is supposed to be, they make it super clear. So let's do that here on our form, and we're just going to do that by changing the style. So we're going to go ahead into the first name, and let's just try this one out first. So we're just going to change the style on this one. I'm going to say that I would like it to have a a border style solid. Actually, let's open this up in a little window to make it easier to see. Border style solid. And then I'm going to go border color black. And we don't want it to be too heavy, so we'll do border color, border width, 1 pixel. Now, of course, I didn't have to memorize all that. I could have gone over here into properties and done it that way, but I've done it here, so that should be fine. Oh, the other thing I want to do is I want to make a background color for it. So background color, and I'd like to do a light blue. So let's look up one of those. Google light blue text color. Oh, that's a nice one. ADD. I'm gonna write that down. AD, or I'm just gonna copy that. ADD. Copy. Let's go back into Alpha Anywhere, and this is gonna be our background color. All right, and there's the sample text. So that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. Let's save it, and we'll take a look at the working preview and see if we like the styling that we've done in that first name field. And yeah, it looks okay. Make sure the text reads okay. It does, great. So now I want to now apply what I've done to the first name field to all of the other fields. So now there's a couple ways I could do that. One is I could just go right over here to the style property, and I could click on this eyedropper, and I could choose all of the other fields and say, go ahead and paste in that style. But I'm going to do it the right way. And the right way is to define it as a class, because if I define it as a class, if I decide to make a change, I don't have to go back and change all of the other fields. So to do that, I'm just going to click on here, style. I'm going to grab the CSS that we had before. Okay. I'm going to go into class, and I'm going to create a new class by editing the local CSS. And I'm going to call this one blue field. I'm going to paste in my CSS. Gosh. There we go. I'm going to click OK. And then the important thing, and I always forget to do this, is I actually have to, now that I defined it, I have to assign it. So I click on blue field and I click plus to assign it. Now it's been assigned. And you'll see that it appears here and there in the class field. So now that that's done, let's go ahead and copy the class to all the other ones. So we're going to do that here. We're going to select these controls here. We're going to set the properties. We're going to click save, just because I like click and save. And then we're going to go into working preview. You don't have to click save. Working preview will still work without clicking save. And you'll see now all of the fields are the way that we want them. So that is pretty much the demonstration that I wanted to show you, but let's pop back into the PowerPoint because the documentation behind the absolute layout container shows you some pretty cool other things that you can do. And actually, let's go right into the documentation. Let's go back to my Windows machine. And we're going to go to here. So if you remember at the beginning, I said one of the disadvantages to using the absolute layout container is that it's always designed for a specific screen size. Well, that is true, but what you can do is you can create multiple versions of your absolute layout container. You can make one that's for portrait mode, like we said here, or in landscape mode. And then when the orientation flips, say on the phone, it chooses the correct one. And it does that by using panel cards and by detecting how that happens. In fact, we have done a little article here on how to do that. I don't think this is technically responsive design. Responsive design usually means that it can do a large screen, a small screen, and then lots of little adjustments in between. Like if sometimes a field doesn't fit on a slightly smaller screen, it'll move it down. This is more of what I would call adaptive design. In other words, it senses I'm in mobile or I'm on a smaller screen, and what it does is it chooses the correct absolute layouts. You're going to be doing multiple absolute layouts if you want to make it quote unquote responsive, or as I would say, really adaptive. All right, so let me go and see if there are any questions. Looks like there might be. Can't you set this? Okay, we'll start at the beginning. This one is more of a comment. So I showed you how I set a border by doing the CSS. And someone said, well, why didn't you just use the subtheme property to create the property? Wouldn't that work? The answer is yeah, I absolutely could have done that. That might have been easier. So what is subtheme? Let's go back and I'll show you. Subtheme property is a collection of CSS that we've predefined for you that's alternate to the sort of the standard way that we've laid out fields. So let's go back into the designer. And so let's imagine I didn't have blue field here. Let's remove that. And so if we do working preview, it should be blank. In other words, where the first name field is, it shouldn't have that blue border, and it doesn't. And then we're going to go in and we are going to set the subtheme. Let me just type in subtheme. So let's click on that and I'll show you what we've got. That's taking a moment. I am using the nightly build, so hopefully nothing is broken in this version. Okay. So the base is the one that is, oh, this doesn't look right. Normally it would display for you what it was going to look like, but I'm going to choose primary, which I happen to know is the one that, oops, there's a bug in this beta version, fine. I'm going to choose primary, which I believe is the one which has already got the border around it. If I go back into working preview, wow, broke something but good, huh? Let's try it again. All right. That should have been a very, very easy demo. Well, that's what I get for demoing with beta software. So let's take a look. Let's see if it's worked it out yet. Oh, it hasn't. Fascinating. All right. Well, that is how you're supposed to do it anyway. You can just choose a subtheme in primary and just don't do it in last night's beta, I guess is the point. I do know it works in the release versions. All right, let's see what else we've got for questions. Someone said, I think the background image is available in the UX itself. That is true. You can, for your UX, set a background image and you can place fields that way. You could probably do it using an alignment container, but the advantage to using the absolute layout is that you can draw the fields exactly where you are, and it's got the the alignment grid and lines that make it really easy to lay them out. So the second one is, how did I make the W4 image available for your project? Well, that was pretty easy. What I did was it easy? It was fairly easy. I generated it as a PDF first, and then I think what I did is I went into Paint Shop, and then I just converted it from a PDF. Yeah, I converted it from a PDF to a ping, like I did here. Now, when I did that, first of all, it's like, and you could have done the same with a scan. This is typically what would happen: is you'd get a scan and you'd probably get that back as a ping. When I did that, though, I needed to resize, right? It worked best if I resized the image using something like Paint Shop or using Paint or just something like that to reduce it down so that instead of like 3,000 pixels across, it was about 1,000. So you do need to pay attention when you're building that image as to its size. You don't want to make it too wide. 1,000, I think, is pretty good for a desktop machine. As far as height, that's really not a problem because you can always scroll. But for width, you want to keep that constrained when you're building it. Someone said, are there any XBasic or JavaScript functions to extract data from a fillable PDF? You know what? There might be, but I don't know offhand. I know that we've worked on that many times over the years and have built applications for customers that have performed that functionality. If you want to send that into guides, guides@alphasoftware.com, I will ask around and see what's been used and what's built into Alpha for doing that. That's a great question. Thank you. And then the last one is, can Alpha Anywhere create the field controls based on the form for me? I know people have done that, taken PDF fillable forms and used them to create Alpha Anywhere forms. That would be a really cool demonstration. So I'm going to hit up the person I know who's done that before, see if they can demo it, or if not, at least they can explain to me how to do it so I can demo it for you. But yeah, that's been done. Great question. Is there anything else? Looks like we have come to the end of the questions. Hey, thank you very much for everyone who showed up. Thank you, especially the new people who seem to stay to the end. Good for you. Again, if you've got more questions, send them to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. Until then, take care and stay well. Bye-bye.